Hey all, so we're doing something a little bit different today. We're jumping around a bit since we only have one lesson from chapter 8. This is something that you'll see on the AP test, but that the book doesn't really have a section for. So we're going to talk about derivatives and inverse functions. So again, jumping around a little bit. And I have given you a set of AP problems on this topic as a PDF, and you can just work from that like you would in the textbook, and I'll post the answers on Google Classroom so that you can check those as you work through it. So here, we're going to talk about a little quick review of inverse functions. So when we talk about inverse functions, we're switching the x and y terms, if you remember. And what's important when we talk about the graphs is that if I have two functions here, they are inverses because they are reflected across the line x equals y, right? This is just a true fact about inverses. So if I have a graph here, which is f, I could say that f inverse, f to the negative 1, is this reflected blue curve. What's also really important here is that, is that if I take any point on the graph, so that would be in this, it would just be an x, y on the original function. The x and y values flip in the second graph. The last important thing about derivatives is that if this is the slope here, the slope of the line at the reflected point is the reciprocal. So hopefully, in this case, the way that I remember that is that if the slope here is rise over run is dy dx, then the slope of the reflected point is dx dy. Just like you would if it was an actual function, you're just changing the place of the x and y values in the inverse. So let's look at a couple of problems of how we can use this information and a couple of the common mistakes. Number one, the table below of given values of the differentiable functions f and g and f prime at selected values of x. Oof, that was not the best written sentence. If g is equal to f inverse, what is the value of g prime of 4? So the first common issue is a lot of students are just going to look at x equals 4. And while this is an understandable first instinct, given this, we don't actually want to do that. Because what this is saying is that g prime of 4 is equal to f inverse prime of 4. Because g and f inverse are the same. Now, here's the important part, is that if f inverse of 4, that's the same as asking where f of x is equal to 4. This is the x value. This here, these are the y values. And so we're not actually looking at x equals 4, we're looking at f of x equals 4. So we actually want to be looking at this row here. And so what this tells us is that since f prime of negative 2, that's the value we're interested in. All right? And so what we'll end up with is to say that g prime of 4 is the reciprocal, so 1 over 4 from here. So again, make sure you're paying attention to, with inverses, the y values are what's in here, and then you take the reciprocal of f prime at that point. This is one of those values where I think it's actually easier when you're given the function by itself. So here, number 2, let f of x equal x cubed plus x. If g of x is equal to f inverse and g of 2 is equal to 1, what is the value of g prime of 2? So once again, we know that g of 2 is equal to 1. That means that f of 1 is equal to 2. So then that means that g prime of 2 is equal to the reciprocal of f prime of 1. So we've got our x value down here, and then they switch places because they're inverses. So this is what we actually want to find, 1 over f prime of 1. So the first thing I will do is find f prime. So f prime of x is 3x squared plus 1. F prime then of 1 is 3 plus 1 is 4. And so then g prime of 2 is 1 over f prime of 1, which is 1 over 4 again. Now, of course, these answers won't always be 1 over 4. It just happened to be the way that these two problems were written. Work from the worksheet. As I said, the answers will be posted on Google Classroom. And please let me know if you have any questions or concerns about anything to do with inverses. I'll talk